So welcome everyone. I'm Carolyn Eswine. I'm with the Department of Urban Planning here at the School of Architecture and Urban Planning at UW-Milwaukee. I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge in Milwaukee that we are on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homeland along the southwest shores of Michigamme, North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Knickknick rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Here are a couple of resources for you to always explore. We always encourage you having that connection and understanding who was on the land before you. So welcome to our spring lecture series. Again, Innovative Cities lecture series. We have 4 topics this year that are the spring that we will be thinking about forward planning. Next month, March 4th, is preparing communities for data center development. We've had a lot of questions. This isn't a debate of are you for a data center or opposed, but communities are asking, what questions should I ask? What should I be aware? What should I understand about the impacts? Whether I want to support the data center development or if my community wants to oppose it. So we're going to have a really great discussion. We have added a little extra 15 minutes to that one, so that'll run until 1:15. Right now, we have a limit of 300 people that can watch live. I'm trying to expand that, but do know if you register, you will always be able to watch the recording of that. April 1st, we have Bridging the Housing Gap. We have representatives from the city of La Crosse and Wabasha, Minnesota. So looking at more of a smaller community, mid-sized community perspective on how they are addressing some of the housing shortage. And May 6th will be Overland Flow Pass. So basically managing big rain without big tunnels. So how do you use the right-of-way area to manage some of the storms that in the Milwaukee region we experienced in August when the tunnels can't take that all in capacity. So a couple of great topics that we hope you'll join us for. So today's topic, we're going to showcase the economic benefits of ecotourism from planning and attracting visitors. What are your year-round events? We are joined by Kelly Cruzy. She's Executive Director from Downtown Racine, and she has been gracious enough to take the whole time. Unfortunately, our speaker from Visit Eau Claire is sick today, but do know there's lots of great things happening in Eau Claire. They have a great, robust program to bring people in to that community. Please post your comments and questions in the chat. We will make sure we have time at the end to have a bit of a discussion and ask Kelly some of your questions. So thanks, Kelly. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thanks for having me. So today we're really going to be talking about programming our communities and why it's important. And then how do we strategize with event impact reporting and using that reporting data to improve events and make hard decisions about events. So why do we program downtowns to begin with? Some of this is obvious, but I just want to lay the groundwork. Obviously, programming drives foot traffic and foot traffic drives sales. So events and regular programming increase visitation frequency, especially those among people who don't shop downtown often. There are quite a few people who don't drive through the downtown on their way to work. If there's not an event going on, they don't really think of downtowns as a shopping destination. They think of them as an event destination. And according to Main Street America, people who come downtown for events are significantly likely to visit multiple events. So programming turns downtowns from a place where people pass through to a place people plan to visit. And at the end of the day, you can't sell to people who aren't there, right? Businesses need the support more than ever, small businesses. And so if we can't bring people to them, they can't sell. Another reason we program events is that it does extend people's dwell time, which directly impacts spending. So the longer someone stays downtown, the more they're going to spend, right? So programming doesn't just bring people down here, it keeps them here, keeps them exploring. It also reduces the perception of vacancy. All downtowns have churn. This is just the nature of downtowns. Small businesses are very difficult to stay in business as a small business. And so whatever your downtown is, it will always have vacancies, will always have churn. So what happens though is when you do have programmed events, it will attract new businesses. People will say, hey, I want to be a part of this, right? And rather than choosing a strip mall to do your brick and mortar, I want to be somewhere where things are happening. I want to be a part of the action. So perception often moves faster than brick and mortar development, and perception does matter. So we want to make sure that people look at the downtown not as a desolate destination with vacancies, but as a place that's always something going on. Also, that events support small businesses that can't handle it on their own. Most independent businesses lack budget, they lack staff, they lack expertise, they lack marketing. So programming levels the playing field when it comes to small and locally owned businesses. And then something that's somewhat often overlooked is that programming builds community identity and pride. So people don't just support downtown because of the shops, although people love small businesses, especially on social media, but to actually feel like their downtown is theirs. Having that pride in a strong community is important. So at the end of the day, events equal sales, hands down. They equal a sense of place and pride. Your downtown or wherever you are should be the heart of your community. And then it's another great tool for recruitment of investment to continue to understand that there will always be churn in downtown. So you're always recruiting. The recruitment never ends. So now we know why we need to program downtowns, but now that we program them, we don't just program them we have to have reasoning behind all of the decisions we made. There has to be a strategic plan in your programming. So we're going to talk today about why it matters, how to do it, and how it changes outcomes. So why event impact reporting is essential. It's essential because we need to make sure when we're planning events that we align our expectations with the actual outcomes. It helps us to guide our staffing and logistical decisions for future events. It will help merchant participation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. It builds confidence. Many of us serve on a nonprofit or a bid, we need to justify every decision we make for events and every cost that we endure. It certainly helps getting sponsorships, and I'll talk a little bit more too about how it encourages downtown businesses to up their game. So when we think about this common perceptions, right? Like I'm sure many of you have heard this. All events bring the same people. We need to figure out different events. All you do are the same types of events. That's such a common perception, and it's not true. It's so not true. And this is what we can do with reporting is to say, this is not the situation, right? So you also hear things like, events don't help my business. I lose business on parade days. What I get on in downtown Racine specifically, events on Monument Square don't generate sales for my business, right? It's all about them, and always should be. It's their business. It's their heart and soul. But what we have with the event impact reporting is a way to show them how they can capitalize on getting the people into their store if they're already downtown. So when people say, hey, it's the same people at every event, your data is going to show your spend levels. It's going to show how long somebody stayed down there. It's going to show if it's a vendor type event, what those outcomes were. It's going to show you where people are coming from. So when people say that you have the same people at every event, which we do all the time, here's the data. And then that's also why perception does not equal reality when it comes to this, right? So keep in mind when you are programming events. So downtown Racine, about 9 years ago when I first started, had about 12 program dates per year, 2 parades, a couple live music sessions, a couple festivals, and we now are at over 80 program dates per year. And we don't do all of the events for the same reason. We have different stakeholders, and we make sure that all of those stakeholders are part of events for a different reason. So events should serve different goals. They're not always about being sales driven. Sometimes they're about being awareness driven. Sometimes they're about attracting tourists and first time visitors, strengthening community identity. So key impact is that you have to make sure you're measuring events based on intent and not assumptions. So reports prove that sales are made. What is great about that is small businesses are always trying to figure out how to survive, right? I mean, it's hard to be a small business. But if you can show on an event impact report that, let's say for a ladies' day out, and you were part of that, if there was 50 participants in that thing and $47,000 direct spend, Did your business see an increased sales of a minimum of $1,000? And if not, then you need to up your game and figure out why that's not happening. Same thing with, we do an event called Party on the Pavement. We'll go into that a little more, but it has about 200 vendors and all of the businesses are there. That was over $1 million in direct spending in a 7-hour period in downtown. Did you get your fair share? And if not, why? And then the Haymarket is a night market. And we were able to prove to downtown merchants that not only was there nearly $500,000 in direct spending over the 7 days, that over 50% of the people spent additional money before and after shopping and dining. Okay, so this sounds great, but first of all, we have to actually come up with these impact reports. So first off, we have to collect data. We have to be efficient about that. So participant surveys, that's obvious, right? I would suggest if you're going to do a participant survey, have it prepared in your event planning so that it's scheduled to go out the next day, scheduled on social, scheduled on e-blast, text message. Obviously, you can do your vendor and merchant surveys, making sure you're utilizing geofencing. Mass texting is wonderful when it comes to surveys, especially if you keep it to 5 questions or less. So if you're collecting the data, whether it be from a raffle or something, get those first priority the next day after that event should be entering that data and doing a quick 5-minute survey via text, because that is one of the most effective marketing there. You can also do direct merchant outreach. So we've even gone as far as done on-site paper surveys for like farmers markets, because some of them aren't as tech savvy. So we just did an old school paper and that worked out really great. And then reminder that you have to have multiple touch points. Just because you throw a survey out there once, whether that be for merchants or vendors, make sure that you're sending it out at least 3 times. Maybe it's once through email, once through text, a second reminder. Over communicate that you need this information. So the type of data that we collect tends to be the merchant and vendor surveys, of course, the people who have attended, geofencing, asking the right questions, like how much did you actually spend, how much time was spent down there, and it's really data focused. So a couple of events here, I'm going to go into those a little bit more, but Ladies' Day Out was something we started back in 2019, and it was not a success at first, but we now just recently averaged almost $80 spent per person, and the dwell time was almost 3 hours, which is incredibly long. Party on the Pavement, over $1 million in direct spending, and 50% of the vendors were first-time vendors. So that's showing a lot of growth and interest in the event. And then Haymarket, our night market, showed that, which is super powerful for recruitment for next year for vendors and getting fresh vendors, was that 100% of the vendors that were surveyed would recommend the event. So that's really powerful information. So there's 2 types of reports that you should be creating. One should be an internal and one should be external. Internal should be done within a week after the event. Sit down with your staff, go over things like staffing, the layout, the design, how is the timing, operations. And then the external is really more for the public, merchants, vendors, any of the stakeholders. So when you're doing the internal postmortem, making sure you're really digging in to, especially the open comment portion of every survey should have a spot at the end that says, do you have any other comments you make? Really dig into that in your internal postmortem, because sometimes you can get really key information of figuring out what worked, what didn't, what kind of staffing gaps, crowd flow, bottlenecks, volunteer needs, logistics, and make sure that you're collecting all this data while it's fresh, started in the spreadsheet, and make some decisions as whether, are we going to improve this event next year or are we going to cancel it? You better be making one of those 2 decisions. You should never just do an event and say, I'm grateful it's done, now on to the next one. Always keeping that key information in front of mind. And then the external reports have a different function to them. They're going to be talking more about the attendance, the spending, length of stay, business participation, behavior of the attendees. What that does, it builds confidence and buy-in, not only with your key stakeholders like your boards, but also to the merchants. And so you can see this is one for Ladies' Day, which we'll kind of go more in a minute. And what's really interesting is that event impact reporting isn't new, right? Everyone has been doing it. But what I have found that has been more powerful than anything is that the format matters as much as the data. So when I'm creating an event impact report, it can be 4 to 10 pages, really heavy, dense information long. And that's great for me. That's great for my internal postmortem. But how many people are going to actually read that, right? How many merchants, how many of your board members, if you send it off, would read that and digest it and even care? So I've switched over to a much more of an infographic, key highlights format. And that seems to have made all the difference in the world. It's easy to understand. It puts the important information right in their face. It's super sponsor friendly. So when I'm asking for sponsorships, I can quickly attach this so they can see it, especially if they're not even from the area, and it's board ready. Every event that you do also should have a goal. So just because we went from 12 to over 80, I'm not just trying to, slap spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I have to make sure that I'm creating a programming in the district that matters. So whether that be having a retail driven event that really focuses on merchant sales, maybe it's a foodie event that focuses not only on dining and dwell time, but also on TOMA, top of mind awareness. When people, when it comes to food, that is one of the greatest things, the top of mind awareness that comes about that, and say, why don't we go back downtown for food? Parades often are more about awareness, visibility, and community pride. Fitness events for repeat visitation, and family events are great for future loyalty. So one metric does not fit all of the events, and it shouldn't. So let's talk about a couple case studies. Ladies' Day Out, like I said, started in 2019. The goal is to drive shopping and dining during and build awareness for holiday shopping, like pre-holiday shopping. So this event takes place in mid-November. So we're really trying to get people geared up and thinking, let's go downtown for our holiday shopping. And it was, the outcome is now strong participation, high per person spent, and longer dwell times. But that did not happen overnight. It was a 5-year evolution. We first started this event, we did it as a night event. And then we found that there was a little bit too much drinking going on and less retail. And we really wanted to hone back in on the focus of that event, which was really retail shopping. We had to really hone in on the marketing message. Every community has a Ladies' Day Out. So we really needed to fine tune, what does that mean? So ours ended up be treated like a queen in downtown Racine. Again, focusing on purchases more than anything else. So every single purchase you made during the event. So even if you shopped at 5 different places, even if you did stop for a cocktail somewhere, you got to draw a card out of a deck of cards. If you pulled a queen of any kind, you got to come down and get you got a golden ticket, which got to be turned in for a wonderful swag bag full of just merchandise from the downtown businesses that they donated. So having that. Prior to that, we were giving out like 100 swag bags to the first 100 people. What we found was people were literally getting in their car, grabbing the swag bags, and leaving the event. So that doesn't help us. So this really iterated the importance of shopping and much better merchant engagement when we started to do that. You can see here in 2023, in 2019, I did an impact report as well. And it looked much different. It was about $15,000 in spending. 2023, 34,000, and we're up to 45,000. It's because we continue to just tweak things just a little bit. And so I think that's really important. Having about 40 businesses participate, huge participation on our end, and knowing what that spend looks like. So the lesson was good ideas still require iteration. So that impact reporting tells us what to do, what to change, and why. We kept going back to our core focus of this event was always going to be, it's a retail driven event. A next case study would be Bend and Brew. This is free yoga, followed by you get a card if you do that for a free coffee brew or beer brew of your choice at a downtown establishment. And so really the goal of this event was wellness and placemaking. The first year we did it in more of on Monument Square, like in the center of town. We had low attendance. The timing, we did it a little bit, I think like 10 a.m. and the sun was beating down. It was hot. People did not like bending in front of cars driving by. And then COVID happened and we had to move off of that location because the city wouldn't let us, which was the best thing. We found this wonderful spot off the beaten path, still downtown, overlooking the lake. We didn't have to pay permit fees. We worked with the county on that. We changed the times and we adjusted. So we just kept adjusting. So this was probably like a 3 or 4 year iteration. We were at 2 different parks throughout the downtown, moved to a new one. And the transformation by moving locations improved our visibility, adjusted the schedule. Now we have over 15 businesses that have participated in the free brew afterwards. And it's offered 3 times weekly with over 50 attendees per session. So that's a really great placemaking success story. Another case study I have is an event I thought I had a great idea for, which was called Soup and Steins. So I had this great event. I immediately thought it was going to be great. I was like, this is going to be an Oktoberfest themed event. I made the logo and I bought the mugs because I was so confident with my idea. And we had different places that were like, the beer holding competition, one place, the slogger game with the nails. I mean, I had the whole thing, the map, everything. I thought this is going to be a huge success. The result was 5 tickets were sold. I'm like, this is interesting. I just really don't understand it. So I was really willing to like call it quits on this one. I really rethought it and said, well, I still have those mugs and I'm not willing to not utilize these like 500 mugs. And so what I did was I pivoted. I moved it from fall to spring. I focused all of the marketing. I did a complete shift and I focused on soup. So now the focus is on sampling soups from 25 different businesses throughout the district. I completely removed the Oktoberfest theme and really just focused on highlighting the local restaurants. And the result was we sold out. So just a great example of you might have a great idea. It's just in your head. It may not always translate the way you think. So you have to allow people you have to be willing to change your idea. And so then why do events fail? We've all had this. If you're in event planning, you've been there, you felt it, and it's horrible. You work so hard at something and either the people don't come, the weather doesn't cooperate, the vision just isn't translating, the marketing isn't working. I think though that events might fail at first and that's okay. But they don't fail because necessarily it's a bad idea. Maybe it's just the timing is off, the format isn't right, expectations aren't aligned. So what can happen is event impact reporting and really listening to the community and why they're not and getting those facts. Why aren't merchants participating? Why aren't the people? Listen. That can all be fixed with event impact reporting. So going back to how events can really improve merchant outcomes, because if you have a district that has stores that a lot of vacancies, stores aren't staying open, you have to have strong merchants, strong stores, strong small business owners in order to have a strong downtown. But this really helps merchants understand customer behavior. Right? You're giving them an insight into information that they don't normally have access to, right? Geofencing, where are they coming from? They get to learn to improve their in-store experience by finding out who was the major clientele, what was the age range, what was the education level, all of that is part of there. You can train your staff better for event days and hopefully convert that traffic into sales. So downtowns create the audience, but merchants need to activate the experience, especially when you're doing merchant-driven events rather than special events. So impact data helps shift from I didn't get much out of it to what can I, as a merchant, as a business owner, do different next time? Now that I have this information, it's on me at this point. And then another key stakeholder for many of you that are in districting and programming is why boards need this data. Well, boards need data because usually boards are just there for oversight. And so they're trying to align with whatever that strategic plan is. And so they're having to make decisions, but they're not really seeing the inside baseball of everything. So this helps with the ROI clarity. It ensures that it aligns with the strategic plan. It builds confidence in their programming decisions because ultimately they make a lot of decisions based on limited knowledge. It helps gives evidence for future funding. So really impact reports turn anecdotes into strategy. And then quick analysis for the naysayers. Again, people will say they don't like our events, or it's not the event for them, or it doesn't help their business. When they see that $1 million was spent in one day, they say they hardly had any sales. Again, that's making them take a deeper look at what they did. And being able to really prove the money was being thrown around. It was just you that chose not to capture it. So, and then it's also great for funding and sponsorships. Really, funding is the key driver behind events, right? I mean, if we don't have funding to put on free events or any type of events, then they're not going to happen. So it helps with your grant applications, being able to attach something simple like that. It really helps with vendor applications. So if you are doing something that is vendor driven, as many of you know, that you can't have the same vendors there every year. You really have to build and make sure that the event has different vendors every time. And so this really strengthens that when you can show them exactly how much was spent. They get excited about what they could potentially make. It demonstrates the accountability of your organization. Hey, 100% of the people that were there said they recommend this one, or you hear actual quotes from the vendors. So this is like something we can send out with our vendor application so that they can quickly see the importance of and credibility of this event. And then again, going back to that postmortem, just making sure that you're not only logistically looking and volunteer-wise looking at how did that run, but did it meet its goal? Who did it serve? What should be changed? Looking at this as a 10,000-foot view. And should it evolve or should it end? Because if it's not going to do one or the other, you're dead in the water. So not every event should stay the same forever. Events are living programs. So again, make sure you're constantly adapting, make sure you're evolving, improving. Understand that there will sometimes be failures with you trying some new things, but usually they will come back stronger, or you'll have some really tough data to say, I think this event has run its course. It's time to move on. And that's okay too, because that allows you to have more time for other events. So just a quick rundown. Ladies' Day Out took 5 years for it to be really, truly a successful event. The Bend and Brew took 3 years. First year was a disaster. Second year was not too good. And now it's on its 8th year or so, or 5 years. It's great. Suppenstein's failed completely, pivoted completely, and sold out. First Fridays is another event that we had that was increasingly having a decline in audience. It was kind of became the same thing every once a month. And it was just losing steam, even though it was this event that you did not want to give up, because it's sort of everyone knows Downtown Racine for their First Friday. And so we had to pivot. So we started adding themes to every single one, incorporating that down all the way through the merchants, to the band, to the merchants, getting more vendors involved, getting some food trucks involved. And now we had a 25% increase in attendance over the course of 2 years from that, making those little adjustments, making it special again, basically. We had a live music concert series on Monument Square. It was, I think I changed the time completely 3 years in a row. I went from a lunchtime, like 11 to 3. Then I said, well, that's not working. And then I tried 2:30 to 5:30. Well, that was way too hot in the summertime. And finally, we found our kind of perfect time, which is at 4:30 to 7:30, because people either come and eat dinner, or they come to the music early and then they grab dinner after. So we really found that that's perfect. And then another example of transformations is we started a bourbon and beer walk on Black Friday, really trying to get more men in the downtown to look at the shops in a different way, include some jewelry stores there, and had about 20 different businesses participate. Again, it's on Black Friday. We were thinking women are going to be shopping. This is a great event to get the elusive and hard to get men in our downtown into actual retail stores. And the first year, we really focused on the bourbon, making it a bourbon walk. It didn't do that great. I thought it would do a lot better. And then what I did was I recognized we have another event that's really popular called the Beer and Bacon Walk. So I said, what can we do to increase, people love food. So I really started honing in on a bourbon infused food. So every location not only had a bourbon, but it had a bourbon infused a food item at each one. And ticket sales nearly doubled. So again, looking at things, what did the public want? When we got that feedback, it was just like, they wanted more. They wanted more. There's tons of like bourbon dinners and things. So they wanted something different. And then what this means. So you don't have to have big budgets, fancy software, perfect data to get these event impact reports completed. You really just need intentional measurement, honest evaluation, and willingness to actually read the reports and take the feedback even when you don't want to hear it. Couple things. So if you don't measure it, someone else will do it for you, and they're going to be wrong. Someone else will say that event didn't work. That event brought the same people. That event is no longer what it used to be. That event, nobody spends money. If you don't measure it, someone else will measure it negatively for you. So make sure that event impact reporting, it will shape people's perception. It improves outcomes internally. And at the end of the day, it really does strengthen the downtowns. So you don't cancel events after one failure, you diagnose them. This is huge. Really diagnose them, figure it out, talk with your staff, read those reports, read the open comment section of those reports. You can really get some great ideas if you just have a couple lines on those surveys that say, what would you do different? What ideas do you have? We've gotten some great ideas from those. And those are people who maybe they wanted it, didn't want to be known who it was who had that idea. But it really allows you to, rather than someone saying, you should do this event, you should do this event. You hear that all the time. But sometimes you get better snippets of information from these surveys of someone who isn't the squeaky wheel in the group and instead says, I had this great idea for this. So really making sure that you're listening. Don't defend your events emotionally. This can be really difficult because you can put your heart and soul into an event. You don't defend them emotionally. You measure them. And you don't chase vanity metrics, right? So we're not doing it just to say, hey, look at this. You have to make sure that you're using your event impact reporting for a multitude of reasons, not just the vanity. And then make sure that you are helping to change merchant behavior, not shame it, right? So if someone says they didn't get any sales off of this event, that's okay. Let's look at the data. Come sit down with me. Here it is. Here's the actual, here's some even deeper info if you are interested, right? The average person has this education level, with 65% women. Maybe we need to approach promotions and guide them and help them. Don't say, well, that's too bad. You missed out, right? So I just, those are really the key things when you think about looking at events, programming events, constantly changing, and being willing to understand that it's not a failure and it's okay to cancel events. It just leaves room for new events as well. So that's all I have for you. And I think we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's really informative, but also I really respect how you're able to pivot and help others understand it might take a few years to adjust. And one of the questions actually specifically was asking, how often do you think that you need to refresh an annual event, or maybe just do a little, I think you noted as how you transform them, but if it's really successful, is there a point where you still need to refresh it?
Yes. Yes, because habits change, people change, what's hot has changed, things that were popular are not. food trucks have theirs are hot right now, but they may not be next year. Vendor markets, you have to always be saying, okay, that was great. You can still celebrate the success of a great event, but you always should be evolving, even if it's slightly always.
Okay. So you're really, the point is every year, take a look at that, right? Okay. So another question, I think another participant sort of answered, but the program you use for geofencing, I know some people are using that Placer AI. What program do you use?
Because we're unaccredited down Main Street through the state of Wisconsin, they do the Placer AI as well.
Okay.
So we're able to work with them.
Work with them through that. Okay, so that's a good point for anyone who's part of a Main Street program. They would have access to some of that, or maybe some other grants. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. So more in general question, I think a couple people are wondering, what are your strategies for determining your vendors? And it might be different by event, but give us a little understanding of that.
Um, has more to do. So we do I have really great staff that actually, when we look at vendors, we don't look at the piece of paper that's in front of us saying what they're going to sell. Every single vendor gets an actual phone call. And that's where we really understand, is this vendor a good fit for us? Because if you go look on just what they write on paper, they might say that, they sell jam and jelly and that's all they say. But then you call them up and they're like, oh, but then we also do this, because you might say no because we already have that, and then find out, oh my gosh, they're so much more than that. Or you might call them up and say, they are so unorganized. They've never done this before. You will learn a lot by listening. So actually having that one-on-one conversation with every vendor is tedious, but I will tell you, one bad vendor can spoil an entire event if you're not careful.
So does it, I guess maybe the event determines, does it focus more on artistry, elements to make versus food and drink?
Yeah, we try to have a good variety. Even our night markets, we focus on food, drink, prepackaged foods, but we also like to sprinkle in a couple nonprofits each time. So we try to rotate those around because we think that's really good for the community. We try to have a couple just hand makers. So diversity is good. Definitely about diversity. Yeah, but you don't want it to turn into all Pella Windows, and you might have to juggle, well, this Pella Windows is a huge sponsor, so we're going to let them, but that's going to be the only service type vendor we're going to allow there. Because if you're not careful and you're just trying to fill your event with vendors to make it seem full, that's the wrong strategy.
Well, and you did note earlier that you always are refreshing vendors each year, even on a successful event. So appreciate that. Obviously, many of us are in a colder climate, including Racine. So can you talk a little bit about seasonal events? I know you mentioned, First Fridays, you had good Black Fridays. So is it those types of events, or do you have anything that's broader and takes advantage of sort of our winter climate?
Yeah, for the winters, of course, summer's a lot very easy to program. We do most of our free events, and in the summer, live music, that types of thing. So everyone knows how to do that. We try to focus our spring with ticketed events. Number one, because retailers are coming off an extremely harsh winter of sales. February is the worst sales of the year, followed by January. So they're coming off a really hard one. Second thing about if you do ticketed events in the spring, we do like a couple wine walks of like a foodie event, the Soup and Steins. People will buy those tickets because they're excited to get out of the house and to do something, and they're hopeful. So they'll buy the tickets early, even when it's still cold out. And even if it still is cold out during the event, because they're ticket holders, they're still going to come. So that sort of saves your event from Mother Nature and the nature of our springs in Wisconsin. So ticketed events I really recommend doing in that time of year. Winter, we do, obviously, in the holiday season, we do something called the Kris Kringle Tour, because Racine is a Kringle capital of the world. People can try different Kringles at 40 different locations. And then like with Small Business Saturday, just trying to reinvent that as well. That was, even though it's a national holiday, that is one of those that people just aren't shopping as locally as it was down. So we ended up getting the grid, having someone come in and dress as the Grinch, and we gave out $1,000 worth of gift cards. They were just $5 and $10. I think they were all $10 gift cards to random shoppers. And then also that brought a lot of kids and families down there. And that gift card had to be used that day. So it put downtown gift cards had to put money directly back into the economy that day. So that's really invigorated the small business Saturday. And then in February, we do something similar to a lot of different places. We do a chili ice walk, which is just free chili samples everywhere, and live ice carving and that kind of thing.
A little bit of indoor, but also an experience, I think, is what I'm hearing. There's another question about software. What are you using for your infographics that you're using on a lot of your report outs?
I personally use InDesign, but I know there's a lot of people can't use that, so Canva is a great option.
Okay, yeah, so highly graphic, right?
Yeah.
So another question is, what is your strategy to secure buy-in from a sponsor or some partners? Maybe if that first year wasn't all that successful.
Yeah, we've had really great success with increasing our sponsorships. I think a couple of things, we also listening to the sponsors. That's another part of your event impact. The sponsors don't necessarily get it all at the event. So there's been events that have been sort of a flop because the weather, like a parade that was like negative 20 degrees for St. Patrick's. We really push the sponsorship aspect leading up to the event. So we do a really good job of making sure that every single social post, every story, every email blast, every text message, we're reiterating and tagging the sponsors. And we've really quadrupled down on that exposure. And that has made a world of difference in getting and keeping sponsors over year after year. Because it doesn't rely so much on the event itself. Yeah, you can put a banner out. Yeah, you can, if they want to be there, but they really want to know that that the community knows that they're part of putting this event on. So treating them like a partner.
So what are the different types of sponsors or different levels that you have that other communities might think about? So there's opportunities for, some smaller engagement at that level to obviously a large ambassador or company that would have a little bit more funding capacity.
Yeah, so we've actually kind of also redid our approach on that, where we used to kind of go after sponsors as each event was coming up, and it was hard on the staff. It was like, you'd reach out to a bigger corporation saying, can I get a lot of money from you? And then you'd reach out to smaller ones for a couple hundred. We now put all of our events in a one packet, and it's spiral bound, plus it's a PDF that is like a 20-page PDF. But it literally lists every sponsorship opportunity per event. And at the end of it, you just check which ones you want to do. Wow. And we send that out November, the prior year. So HR loves it. They just literally check. Here's the cash, turn it in. They're done for the year. Here's our logo. And they've done their job as like human resources, or a lot of funding is coming now from the marketing department because community engagement is more effective than, money when they're spending that in print and radio. So making it easy for sponsors to do multiple sponsorships and make one decision rather than, then I'm not harassing them all year long either. It's like, great, we're done.
I think it's good to there's a point of entry, and then it sounds like if once you catch them, they're hooked and they want to be part of different events. So is there an event that you would love to do that you haven't done yet? Maybe not a fair question, but
yeah.
Well, we got a lot of people on here.
A lot of the ones I've done were the ones I've implemented. The beer and bacon was a fun one to do the first time. I had that random idea, and I was like, "This has got to work, right?" And that one did work right out the gate. But that one is, and I don't bacon infused food, so it's not just like bacon at every event, but like every restaurant makes like a bacon infused inspired like food item. So it becomes this like, I don't know. I think people are really loving the foodie type events. It gives people a reason, and then they're shopping while they're there. But I think the day of just like beer walks and things, people really want another hook to get them to pay that ticket price.
I think I have a couple more questions, but while I'm asking Kelly those questions, I think those of you who are listening, if you want to put in the chat, is there a favorite event that you've attended in your community? I think it would be interesting for everybody who's on to see the variety of events that are out there. Just you can just have a brief description or a phrase. If it's a night market, or is it the brew, the ladies' day out. So I'm curious from your level of capacity. So can you just describe your organization and how much you're doing? Because it sounds like a lot of this is your capacity and energy. And then how does that connect to the city's role? What relationship do you have?
Yeah, it's all coming out of this small office. We don't even do event committees anymore. We found that I've got I got one other full-time employee, one that's almost full-time. So it's really just the three of us that everything comes through, and we do everything in-house, marketing, design, and then we've got some seasonal staff, and then we really work on volunteers. But as far as the city goes, I mean, they partner with us for a thing called the Haymarket, which so we would not be able to put on a night market because markets don't make any money. Let's just face it, right? I mean, a vendor pays 30, $40. But it's a good placemaking. The reason for that event is placemaking, nothing else. And so that event, if we didn't have the support of the city, that probably wouldn't work so well. But yeah, it really is. It's as a nonprofit, it's coming out of this office. Yeah.
And you have how many staff?
Me, one other full-time, and then one that's like in between part-time and full-time.
Okay. I think that's helpful for those on, if they're part of a larger municipality, they might have a downtown organization, but for the smaller communities, they'd have fewer events. They're not going to have 80 plus like you're doing in Racine, but it has to be fully powered by an individual and then having those connections. Are there any suggestions you have for people when they're working with the city, whether it's permitting or signage or closing streets? I know that tends to be a challenge and needs a lot of preparation in planning. Any suggestions for that?
Yeah, I would say if you have a bid district as well, make sure you're working with them, because having the support of the bid can provide funding such as like the porta potties, which can get expensive really fast. They can help with the marketing funding of that. They can help with seasonal staff ambassadors is what we call them. So without the support of the bid being sort of the engine, so while we're working on all of the planning and logistics, we do need some of those bigger unsexy key drivers to actually make these events, fund them to, especially if these free events. So making sure if you haven't worked with your bid, at least introduce yourself to them, and they may have some ways to support it, because their job obviously is to keep the valuation of the district up. And if a district doesn't have people in it, that's certainly not going to help the valuation, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, this has been really, I think really exciting and informative, as we're obviously in a cold month, but soon we'll be outside attending a lot of these different events. I think my takeaway also is it's everything from food, which is popular, but to wellness. So how are you connecting wellness and exercise to people exploring their community and maybe experiencing places they hadn't normally visited? So I really appreciate you sharing your contact information. So it sounds like you're open to those online if they want to reach out, have a few questions. Maybe come visit Racine if they haven't been there for one of the events. And a reminder to everyone, there was a survey that Eli posted. So give us some ideas as we're planning for next fall, some topics that you'd like us to consider, as well as we'll be sharing the recording out next week. So if you have some friends, we always have the archive of our past events. So reminder that March 4th, we will be exploring the planning options and categories related to data centers. So register for that, and we'll plan on seeing you at the next ICL. So thanks for joining us. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you so much. Had a great time.